I want to be everybody's friend. I want to. Nothing would please me more than one of the team coming up to me and saying, "Danny, do you want to go for a quick pint after work?" And I used that example. I'd love to go for a drink and have a bite to eat, but that's never going to happen, and it's never going to happen at a friend capacity because at the end of the day, I might have to fire you.
This is the We Built This Business podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Osullivan. This is the podcast for UK business owners to share their journey, their knowledge, their sacrifices, and their successes. This podcast is sponsored by Team Building Experiences. If you're planning a team building event, away day, or corporate event, then check out team-building-experiences.co.uk and state podcast 15 in the comments to receive 15% off your proposal.
We're very pleased to welcome Mr. Danny Lacey. Danny, thank you for being with us today.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for inviting me onto your show, by the way, and great work so far. I'm really enjoying the content that you guys are recording, and so it's lovely to be a part of that, so thank you.
Danny, we actually met recently, about 6 months ago, at a networking conference event, and I didn't know at the time there that I'd actually listened to all of your podcasts. And I'll tell you a little story. When I was traveling down to Cornwall one night, it's a 4-hour journey, kids asleep. The Diary of an Entrepreneur came on, and 19 episodes later, we arrived in Cornwall. So I listened to it all in one big bang. Really enjoyed it. And I think when I turned up at the conference, I was kind of like, I recognize his voice. And then, later, obviously in the car, we turned on the podcast, and I was like, I've definitely heard this before. So really pleased to have you on, Danny.
Fame at last. I feel like I've made it now. That my job is done.
It's all over. It's all finished. Right, Danny. So I just wanted to start off, if you could tell our listeners just a bit about the WOWVI group and what you're up to at the moment.
So the WOWVI group is something that's been on the cards for quite some time. It's a new restructuring of the business to fit future growth. So we're growing through acquisition, which is something I'm sure we'll get into in a bit more detail a little bit later. But it's basically a way for us to offer a broader marketing and content production service for current clients that we have and have had for many years now, but also to open up the doors for other client acquisitions, because we've seen a niche in the market for clients wanting everything under one roof in our sector instead of dealing with 4 or 5 different agencies who all have different opinions on branding and messaging. They come to one company that has lived and breathed that brand for a while, and we know what needs to be done and how it needs to be done, and to be able to do social and design and video and animation and all these other things. We've seen work successfully in the past. So the WOWVI group was set up as a holding company for future business acquisitions. We currently have WOWVI Video, which sits underneath that group structure, which is a video production company working with a lot of clients up and down the country. We currently have 13 staff in the business at the minute, and the business is growing. So yeah, that's where we're at. It's very new. It's a very new thing at the minute, and it's we've got a 5-year plan to grow the group.
Fantastic. So the WOWVI Video, what sort of videos are you producing?
Every kind of video. We literally are able to turn our hands to any type of video. So we do live actions. We've got the team out at the minute filming down south somewhere, I think it is today. And we do animation, 2D, 3D. We do 3D visualization. So we have a lot of companies come to us that have a product that's in prototype phase, so they don't physically have the product, but they have CADs and drawings of the product. And what we do is we can take those CADs, bring them to life in 3D world. We can spin the products around, break them apart, and do all sorts of crazy things with them. We do live streaming. So I'm currently in our live streaming studio here in our office based in Wakefield. And yeah, anything to do, we've done some pretty crazy things over the years, but anything to do with video, we're able to turn our hands to. I wouldn't say we specialize in one particular area. We specialize in all aspects of video, and we do add a strategic element to the video we create. There was a day where clients would come to us and say, I need a video. they'd give us a budget, we'd create the video, hand the video over, and we'd walk off into the sunset. Whereas now we push back a little bit more with clients and ask them to think about what that return looks like on the investment in that video. And we get them to think about the delivery of that video. Who's going to watch it? Where are they going to watch it? How are they going to watch it? And what do you want them to do and feel after seeing the video, and so on. So there's a lot more thought goes into the video that we produce. That's probably the most important part of any kind of video production or any projects that we work in at the minute, is that think part of the process.
Super powerful videos, isn't it?
It's the well, it's not just the future, it's the now, isn't it? Everyone's watching. I mean, I don't know about you, Dan, but I'm a big TikTok fan. Never used to be, but it's everything I watch is video. I watch YouTube all the time now. Everything that I kind of digest in the business world also comes from that area. So Danny, is your background video? Did you grow up producing video, and then that's where the company has come from?
Long story short, my background is actually so I started life as a DJ, and then I was also a radio broadcaster. So I did 20 odd years presenting radio programs, breakfast shows, drive time shows, overnights, you name it. I've done it for 20 odd years, and then video didn't really come into my. I've always wanted to be a film director ever since I was a kid. I used to write short stories, and I was right into filmmaking, but I never did anything with it. I went straight into media, other kinds of media, specifically video and audio, radio and audio. And then in my 30s, I decided that I'd had enough of getting paid to talk nonsense between records for years, and that filmmaking was where my passion was. So I basically started that journey of filmmaking. So I picked up a camera for the first time. I read lots of books. It was books back in those days, and there wasn't much in the way of YouTube videos either, because we're talking 2007, 2008. And it just kind of spiraled from there. And what I did do back in those days is I made a pledge to do what I'm doing now with my business journey, was to share my journey as a filmmaker, warts and all, how I was learning, writing scripts, directing, producing, editing. And I did a weekly live stream show, which was pretty novel back in those days. So anyway, I went on that journey for a few years, and then decided that, well, this wasn't going to pay the bills, because you don't make money in filmmaking unless you're Steven Spielberg, David Fincher, and all that. So I decided that I was going to do video production for corporate clients, which again was relatively new. It was ahead of the curve back in the days. So I picked up the Yellow Pages, which for those of a certain age will understand what I'm saying. For those slightly the younger generation will have no idea what I mean, but it used to be a big book full of names and addresses of businesses. Now you've got the internet, which has made life a lot easier. But I picked up the Yellow Pages and I listed 100 clients that I wanted to work with, and I just hit the phones, which is the most soul-destroying thing ever. I hate sales, cold calling. But I did it, and 7 phone calls in, I hit B&Q through their health and safety company for the North. And so I rang this guy, and he's like, I said very nervously, "Hi, it's Danny from Starder Video. Would you be interested in a video?" And I just couldn't believe the timing of it. He said, "Funnily enough, I am literally in my van on the way to meet my client to talk about health and safety protocols and processes and videos on that list. How much would you charge for a health and safety video, one day filming in Blackpool, I think it was, and then editing a 2-minute or 10-minute video, 10-minute induction video it was." So I nervously wanted to I just plucked a number out of thin air. I think it was about £500, which is ridiculous. But he was like, "Yeah, cool, done." And that was it. That was my first job working in video production, and it just kind of spiraled from there, really. So that's the short story.
How much experience did you have sort of before that in filming and stuff? Did you have much experience before you actually went out and found that customer?
Well, the video that I shot for that customer no longer exists, and for a very good reason. It was shocking. But I had some experience, yes. I'd done short films. I wasn't completely wet behind the ears, but at the same time I was. It was terrible, but I'm a massive believer in just getting out there and doing it. I knew that I wasn't the best, and I knew it wasn't going to be the best video, but I had that kind of confidence about me to just give it a shot. And we weren't charging the earth, so I didn't feel that bad. But the client was happy with it. Yeah, no, well, back though in those days it wasn't too bad, but the client was over the moon, really happy with it. We got more work off the back of it as well, which was surprising, but nice. But as far as experience goes, I not much at all. I'd probably had a couple of years working my way around a camera. I still wasn't overly familiar with the inner workings of a camera, nor was I great at editing or motion graphics and stuff. So it was very Blue Peter, sellotape, blue tack, and
You were doing
sticky
the
back tape, all that
whole
sort of
thing.
thing.
You were doing the shooting and the editing, everything.
Everything, yeah. It was just
Yeah.
me on my own in my spare room. Yeah, I did absolutely everything: account management, sales, account management, marketing, filming, editing, delivery, uploading. I did, yeah, everything beginning to end.
Amazing. I love the story of where you got your first customer. I mean, just shows perseverance, isn't it? You know, it's literally just back to picking up the phone, asking the question. So when you first started in business, Danny, what was kind of the most challenging aspect that you didn't expect?
There was quite a few things. I mean, if I go back to the early days, the biggest thing was earning enough money to live, to pay the bills. And so even though I got lucky with that first call, I still had that. I wasn't going to live off of that, and that certainly wasn't going to, pay for the shopping and keep the lights on. So it was sales and marketing. I guess sales was the biggest issue I had at early doors. I literally tapped into every single contact I'd made over the years and managed to get a few sales over the line. So that was probably the biggest headache in the very, very early days. And then beyond that, the usual regular things really. We hit a moment where I'm sure we'll come to this at some point, but I hit a spike moment, what I call a spike moment in business. I had a client ring me on, so it's still me working from home on my own, and a client of mine that I'd done some graphic design for previously rang and said, Danny, I've got this idea. I want to set up a TV channel on Sky. And by the way, I want to do it within 6 months. And I want you to create the content, build the studios, deal with Ofcom and Arkiva for delivery, satellite delivery, all these things that I'd never done before. And he said, I believe in you. Are you interested? And stupidly, I said yes. And then realized that I'm going to need help. And so the first major headache became dealing with that demand. I had demand on me personally. And so now I had to think about, right, okay, I'm going to need people. I'm going to need office space to do this. And then there's the logistics. There's the logistics around that. So those were two of the early kind of issues I had: sales and recruiting and finding the right people.
Yeah, so finding the right people is one of the hardest skills, and also especially for your market where it's heavily skill dependent. You can't bring just anyone in and pretty much train them up overnight. How do you go about obviously making sure that you find the right people?
Oh, this is one of those questions, and this is one of those things in business that there is no answer. There is no silver bullet. You literally have to live by trial and error because, and I've experienced most ends of the scale as far as recruitment goes. There are times where you get it right, and when it's right, and it works brilliantly. And there are times when it's a huge failure, and it's a time and resource vampire on the business. So we go through the usual, or have gone through the usual recruitment scenario. We put adverts out on job boards, we headhunt on LinkedIn, and then we go through the interview process, which we've changed a lot over the years. We make it a lot tougher now. Now, there's definitely an argument going on LinkedIn and other various forums as to how many interviews should a candidate go through. And obviously, the candidates are going to say one or two interviews. Of course, they are. But I believe in more. We put people through a 4 or 5 phase process on recruitment, and some might think that's a bit harsh. But try running a business where you're relying on finding the right people for that business, and then run a business where that person that you hire is not the right person and is doing nothing but creating you headache. It's pushing back against everything that you want to achieve as a business, even though you're fair and you're trying to do everything that you're supposed to do and then some, and then to put them through a slightly tougher interview process. And it's not tough. It's not a tough process. It's just it's a more elongated process, and I'll tell you why. So what we found is when we were doing 1 or 2 interviews, the candidates were flying through that process and interview, and we were getting a little bit carried away and a bit excited. Oh, they're amazing, they're going to fit perfectly, and we're hiring just the wrong kind of characters. When you start adding additional processes to it, what you find is most people drop off by the 3rd round. The people that are there and just doing interviews by numbers, it's like, I'm desperate for a job. I don't care. I don't care where I'm applying. I just need a job. And they get filtered out pretty quick. The minute you get onto round 3, which is now we want you to do a presentation, we want you to work on a task. Now you start to realize who the serious candidates are versus the non. Now, I'm not oblivious or naive enough to think that everybody wants to work for my business. I know that there's going to be a volume of traffic in those 1st and 2nd interviews. But what I hope, and is if we've done our jobs properly as interviewers, that by the 2nd and 3rd interview, that candidate who might have been just chancing their luck at everything, start to look at us as a business and think, do you know what? Actually, I really do want to work for these guys. I quite like what they're saying, what they're about. So if you get a candidate that makes it to round 3 and 4, then that they're baked in now, that they really want this job, and that they're not doing it as a volume thing. And then by interview 5, which is generally usually an interview with myself or Ben, who's our MD here, and that's very informal. It's literally just ticking a few boxes to make sure that we're absolutely on the same page. And then we, hire the right kind of candidate. And when we've done that and followed that process, 9 times out of 10, we find the right candidate in the long run for the business. So, yeah, as I've said, and even there are times when we've not had the right people in the business, and there's the other side of the coin, is moving faster. There's a saying, hire slow, fire fast. And it's true. And I think people need to live by that in business. If you've got a cancer developing in the business, and we all have it, none of us, even though on LinkedIn you see a lot of companies and agencies specifically talking about how amazing their teams are, and there's always pictures of people having birthday cake and bringing their dogs to work and everything's hunky-dory, and we all know that that's not true. That's just absolutely not true. The reality is, you're always going to have struggles with people in a business when you get to a certain size, especially when you start getting politics in office politics and little cliques developing, and it just becomes a massive headache. So going back to recruitment, going through a process, and I think there's nothing wrong with having a slightly stricter policy in place to protect not only you but the candidates as well, because there's nothing worse for the candidate than taking on a job that isn't actually for them either. So it's always a 2-way conversation. It's always 2-way traffic. So I'm a big believer in that, and I get frustrated when I see people arguing against it, saying, "But why would you put them through more than 2 interviews? Why would you not?"
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive investment, isn't it? It's investment in time, it's investment in money, and it's obviously the future of the business as well. Because, like you said, if you have the wrong person that comes into the business, it can make a huge impact on what you do day to day. Because your heart's always there, especially in a small business. I mean, how many employees do you have in the WOWVI group?
There's 13 of us at the minute. At our peak a couple of years ago, we had close to 8. I think it was 18 that we had. And in amongst that were people that just weren't right for the business, and you could start seeing the cracks appear internally with that. Whereas now we've got a really good, solid team, and touch wood, they're all working really well together. They all believe in what we're trying to achieve. Some of them have been here for 10 years, 8 years, 5 years, 6 years. So it's quite a duration. There's very few people in the business that have been here for less than 2 years.
That's right. Yeah, really good. I mean, we're on about 17, and I think we experienced a little bit of pain around that 12, 13, 14 mark, where, like you said, clicks start to form, and you start having too many people in the business to all be that kind of small, tight-knit unit that you're used to when you're a little bit smaller, that we had when we were maybe 5 or 6 people. But obviously that's one of the challenges of overcoming growth, isn't it, and getting into that kind of bigger size of business. talking on the, the kind of mental strains of, running a business. Your podcast, episode 10, I had a look earlier. One of my favorite podcasts that I've ever listened to is
thank you.
when you effectively said, look, I'm going to have a conversation with everyone and I'm going to tell them that, I'm not here to be your friend. And I love that because that is so true. How did the team react to obviously that conversation? And is that kind of mentality helped kind of the business over the last kind of couple of years?
Yeah, massively. Without a doubt. And we all get it and we all understand. It's such a powerful thing, such a powerful theme. And I remember having that conversation very clearly. The conversation started off as I was explaining to the team how I see the business, how I see the team. It is a team, and for me, it's a team sport. I'm a football fan, for example, and the way I look at business is very much like a football team. You've got your defenders, your midfielders, your attackers, your goalkeeper, your chairman, your football coach, your managers. It's a very similar setup, and we look at things on an individual, a departmental, and then as a team basis. And so I was explaining. So I started off explaining that analogy as to how I see the business formation and how individually their performance within the business can affect the rest of the team. We could win or lose clients based on the tiniest little error and tiniest little mistake. And then that led to my psychology, my mental approach to running a business. I want to be everybody's friend. Nothing would please me more than one of the team coming up to me and saying, Danny, do you want to go for a quick pint after work? And I used that example. I'd love to go for a drink and have a bite to eat, but that's never going to happen. And it's never going to happen at a friend capacity, because at the end of the day, I might have to fire you a little bit down the line because you're not performing well or you've done something that's against company rules or whatever. So I can't have that, and nor can any business owner. And any business owner who thinks that they're everybody's friend is disillusioned, is just not living in reality. You're not everybody's friend, and people aren't your friends either, because you've got tough decisions to make, and you're not going to get an entire team that agree with everything that you do. You have to make decisions. Your business is your personality. It's your name above the door. It's your vision. It's your goals. It's your dreams that you've had for the last 20 years. And so, but what I did say, the way I caveated that is, I can't be your friend. I can't come to your birthday parties. I can't go for a normal drink after work and chew the fat and talk about all sorts of cool stuff. We probably could, but it wouldn't be in a friend capacity. But the way I can be your friend is by trying to get you to perform and giving you all the right tools and resources in the business. And then if the business grows and becomes successful and hits the milestones that we need it to hit, one of the key things that we want to do as a business is invest back in people. You'll never see us online. I mean, I'm doing it now with you guys, but I'm talking, you'll never see us on our LinkedIn page talking about this. We just get on with it and we do it. We want to reinvest in people. I want people to be on silly wages. I want everybody to be on salaries that are way, way above industry standard. I want us to help people with finances. I want us to help people achieve goals in life. So we often ask people, what do you really want to achieve? What's the kind of dream? One of the guys here wants to edit a film, an actual blockbuster Hollywood film. And so we're thinking about that in the background and how we can help open doors. So we want to do, so that's how I can become your friend, right? That's if I can make this business successful, I promise that I will do everything I can to kind of give back, not just financially, but in other areas as well. Flexibility at work. And I'm a big believer in earning your stripes, for example. There's people in our business that have been here for 10 years and they're in the inner circle in this business. They've been loyal, they've been committed, they've dedicated blood, sweat, and tears to helping me grow this business, and that doesn't go unnoticed. So that's how I become a friend, just through that.
That's great. I love that. Unbelievable. I guess, how the mental toughness needs to be in, I think, when you're a business owner, because you do want to, naturally as a human being want to be everyone's friend, but the reality is you do have to make tough decisions. What are
The
the
reality, sorry to interrupt you, the reality is that running a business is a really lonely place because there's not many people that understand what you're going through, not even your partners, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever. They don't understand what you have to go through, the nuances of running a business. They won't understand the real inner workings of an entrepreneur or business owner's minds, because there's differences there as well. There's entrepreneurs and there's business owners, and there's people that are self-employed and freelance and so on and so forth. Um, it is an incredibly lonely place, incredibly lonely. And I think to most people, being an entrepreneur or a business owner is very much a buzzword at the minute because of the likes of Dragon's Den and Apprentice. Everybody wants to be a business owner, but it's not cut out for not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur. And that's part of the reason I did my online, I was sharing the business journey through Diary of an Entrepreneur and the other bits that I'm doing online, was to not teach anybody anything, but to certainly make you think about it. So that moment where you are freelance or self-employed and you are working at home and quite happily living good lifestyle, earning enough money, and then an opportunity comes across, a spike moment, I call them, where you get an opportunity, a client gives you an offer of a big contract, and then you have to start thinking about staff and all these other things. That's not for everybody. But the minute you get into that, hiring staff, taking on leases, that's it, you're in. And it's not easy to get back out. And then by that point, the amount of conversations I'm having with business owners right now who fell into that role, they didn't set out to be an entrepreneur nor a business owner, but one thing led to another. And then the next thing, they've got 20 staff, 4 or 5 officers, and all this craziness happening. And then their mental health has been affected and it's hitting them physically and stuff. So yeah, I don't think I'm underplaying it. It is a very, very lonely place, and I do believe it's only for a certain type of person, certain type of character to take on that role of growing a business.
do you have any kind of like coping mechanisms or ways that you kind of deal with the pressure? Like you're saying, through sport, do you tend to play sport? Does that help, for example?
No, I don't. I should though. I definitely need to do. I exercise. I I challenge myself and review myself daily. I have, I mean, this is a podcast in and of itself. My productivity, the way I make notes of goals, I do daily journaling religiously. I journal everything, and I set myself goals and targets, and I probably put too much pressure on myself. But yeah, no, I don't. Is the quick answer to that. The best thing I do to cope with stress is the fact that I've been through so much in business. When we had Starter, for example, um, there were the ups and downs. There were some really amazing highs and some pretty awful lows. And I've experienced all aspects of growing a business at my level. It's all very relative. I mean, there'll be people that experience way more than I've experienced, but for me and the level I'm working at, and they weren't easy times at all. But I believe that I had to experience that to be the business person that I am today. I don't agree with the word failure. I know it's a very cliche thing to say, but I don't believe in failure. I just think that it's just part and parcel of it. I think I'd respect so for me, somebody would have more credibility about them if they had more of those failures and they're still going and they're still growing and becoming something. I'd have more respect for that kind of person than the most. So the way I deal with it is to allow it to happen, is to experience it. And as long as I'm doing the right thing, doing everything above board, and as I should be as a responsible business owner, then I'm happy with that. But I think yeah, I should be definitely need to be doing more sports because I'm not getting any younger. But you grow a thicker skin every time you get knocked down. It's having that confidence and I guess that's what I've got about me, is that confidence. I'm not easily deterred from most things. If I'm adamant I'm going to do something, if I want something, I will get it eventually. And I guess that's the stubborn side of my personality.
That's the
Most people,
entrepreneurship side coming through, isn't it? The
yeah,
desire
that,
and
and
the yeah.
that's what
I'm
entrepreneurship
interested
and
to know
that's what entrepreneurship is all about.
what percentage of your day is made up about thinking about the business? Is it quite, I'm imagining just from the way that you're talking, it's quite a big part of it.
Yeah, it used to be very small amounts. in the business, in the thick of it. Whereas now, because I've got a management team in place, I've got Ben, MD, I've got Kat looking after all the accounts that we work with. I'm able to work on the business a bit more. So I've got a mixture of self-development. So I'm trying to learn and educate myself on a lot of things. I'm doing that daily, reading a lot of audio, listening to a lot of audiobooks. Then I make notes from those audiobooks and then I turn them into my own way of thinking and fit them into how I do things, as well as strategy and vision around the business. So thinking about allowing myself to have time to think about ideas to grow the business, opportunities that might be out there, internal stuff. So looking at how we could do better for the team, and then luckily, because I've got Ben with who's my kind of right hand man, I guess, is then getting in a room with him, because the way I've explained it to the team, the best, how I can get the best out of me is get me in a room, let me go with the ideas, let me just spiel the ideas, discuss, and then for the team to instigate those, because that's not instigation is being a practitioner of that is not my strong point. My strengths, and I need to, and I'm self-aware enough to know what I'm good and what not I'm not good at. My strengths are in the creative, the visionary, which is what I am in this business, the visionary, and Ben's a practitioner, the instigator of that vision. And I think it's important to have that. Whereas previously I was everything. I was going out and buying toilet roll and stuff for the kitchen, invoicing and doing all these things. Whereas now I don't have that. So yeah, to answer your question, I guess I do have, my calendar is very well organized through the week, and I'd say I spend probably 30 to 50% of my week in that think mode, in that knowledge and think mode, which I think is really important. And then the rest of it probably working a little bit in the business, meetings, catching up with the team, supporting where I need to support. So it is a decent chunk, because it takes time. The knowledge, the acquiring that knowledge and learning and failing and regrouping and starting again, that takes time.
Yeah, it certainly does. We've been through that a number of times over the last couple of years as well. Obviously, self-learning incredibly important. Do you also have any kind of outside help, like mentorship or any business coaching or anything like that?
Yeah, I've got a business mentor. He's been my mentor for about 8 years, I think now. I discovered very early that I wasn't accountable to anybody, which could be quite dangerous. And I needed that accountability, because you don't, when you're the head of the business, who are you accountable to apart from clients and team, I guess. But on a bigger scale, on the buck stops at you generally in business, all roads lead to you. But what happens when those roads get to you? Who are you accountable to? And I wasn't accountable to anybody at the time. And I felt like I needed to be not put in my place, I guess, but certainly for somebody to be asking me questions all the time. Why are you doing that? What is that the right thing to do? So I searched long and wide to find somebody, and I found John, who's my business mentor. He was CEO and owner of one of the largest digital marketing agencies outside of London, Bram, which then became Brass Agency. And he's experienced everything in business. He had 200 staff, 20, 30 million revenue business or whatever it was, working with big brands and small brands. And he's been phenomenal. And that's the one thing that I say to a lot of entrepreneurs that I speak to is get a business mentor. And I wasn't paying for his time. I think that's key, because there are a lot of business mentors out there who pay and charge handsomely for their time. And that's fine. I totally get that. And I respect that. And absolutely, there is value in that knowledge and in that time. But at that stage in my career, I didn't need a service. I needed some kind of soundboard. I needed support. I needed somebody who believed in me and wanted to help. And now, about 8 years on, we're now paying for his time, because he's on the board now, and it's more of an official capacity within the business, not just me. So he's playing more of a role in the business now. So he's getting paid for that now. But previously, he was just giving his time up. And there are people out there that do that. He'd been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and he was happy to just give me his time. And again, the relationship was there. He believed in what I was trying to achieve, and he's helped me ever since. And that was a game changer for me in my business, psychologically, having that support. I could have conversations with him, for example, that I couldn't have with anybody else. and have somebody understand what it is that I'm saying, and nodding his head and replying, going, I've been there, I've done exactly what you've done, and here's what I did. And that saved me probably a year of my life and thousands in investment.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at mentorship a few times and also business coaching, and I've never quite committed. And I really resonate with the accountability part, especially over the last 6 months. I've kind of felt that I almost need someone to be accountable to. It's definitely something that I think I'll look at again in more detail.
I think, honestly, sorry to interrupt, I think it's essential. And find somebody who sees it not as a transaction, because like I said, there are lots of them out there, business mentors who've all grown massive businesses, and they'll charge you the earth to give you a day of their time. And again, I get it, it's a big industry, it is important, there is a lot of knowledge out there, and it's worth that. But there are business owners like yourself, like me, and many others. You need to find that business mentor who doesn't see you as a transaction early doors, but believes in you, believes in what you're trying to achieve, and wants to help. And if there's financial recompense further down the line, great. And if you want to pay them for their time, as long as you're leading that conversation, then you get a different kind of relationship. I believe that. I've worked with mentors before John that I paid for, just wasn't the same. It just felt transactional. It just felt we were just joining a few dots. I got a lot more out of this relationship because there was no money involved. There was no invoice that had to be paid, and if it wasn't paid on time, then it creates an issue. And any of that, it was like having I called him my business dad, although he hates me saying that because he's not that old. But that's how I saw him, as a I guess a father figure in business, weirdly, and it just worked. And now he's making, and now he's earning a living, not a living, but he's getting financial rewards for dedicating his knowledge and expertise. So I'd avoid. Yeah, I'd avoid paying for it for now, unless it's a specific thing. For example, the stuff the course that we're on for business acquisitions with Jonathan, totally get that. 100% happy to pay for that. That is a transaction, and I know what I'm getting for that. But John is he's there for me any day or night, weekends. If you need me, ring me. That's the deal, and that's what I needed, and that's what I need.
From a timeline perspective in the business, what time did John come into it?
When I needed it, as I needed it. It was about, I think it was about 8 or 9 years. I can't remember the exact date. It was at a time where we were big enough for it to be worth his investment in his time. If I'd have gone to him and I was still me working from our spare room at home, he probably would have looked at me and gone, I don't think you're ready for me just yet. Whereas we were growing, and I was definitely feeling teething problems with the business, that I just didn't feel I was knowledgeable enough on. And I think he probably felt sorry for me in a little way, but heart on the sleeve type of person. I think he liked that. So I think the earlier the better, but you can be too early as well. Because you've got to remember, you've got to have somebody at the other end who sees you and sees you credibly, as serious about growing a business. And if you're on your own working from your spare room with 3 clients, that's not going to have that credibility factor. Whereas I got to that scale and I was ready for a business mentor. You just know, like you guys are absolutely 100%, at scale for needing business mentorship, or somebody there as that kind of guiding star, I guess.
That accountability. Have you ever, there may be people out there listening. Have you ever thought of either becoming a mentor yourself, or, further on down the journey, looking into providing mentorship for other, obviously, other companies in your industry or others?
Yeah, I would like to do that. Actually, the more I think about it, the more I do the kind of online content, the sharing. Because my ethos at the minute is I'm sharing, not teaching. I don't feel, I guess there's a little bit of imposter syndrome creeping in from time to time, and we all go through it. Whereas I don't feel qualified enough to teach, so I couldn't do classes and charge for that just yet. But I know what I want to. I don't want to go that road. I don't want to go the coach road, but mentoring, and I'm doing that, I guess, a little bit at the minute through the stuff I do on my channel. There'll be things that people will take away and learn from, I guess, or it certainly help them in their journey. So I want to do more of that, I want to ramp up the personal content because I enjoy that and I can do it. I'm not shy. I have something and knowledge to share, as have you guys, as have we all. Anybody running a business at whatever scale has something to share. But yeah, doing more of this and doing more of these sorts of things and sharing. Because as I'm talking to you, I'm reminding myself, because this is good therapy for me. I'm reminding myself of stuff that I've done in the past that you don't spend all day thinking about these sorts of things. But when you're having conversations, you suddenly think, do you know what? Actually, yeah, I do remember doing that. And wow, I learned a lot from that. And yeah, that helped me. And so it's kind of twofold. So giving back, helping others, and at the same time, you're reminding yourself of how, what you have achieved. Because we all, running a business, we all kind of get stuck in the mire. We get stuck in the mud, in the weeds, so to speak, and we forget that each day we're actually achieving something. For example, one of my businesses started. It made it 17 years. And as much as we had to voluntarily liquidate that business, and I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point, because of circumstances, we made it 17 years. Not a lot of businesses make it that far. The stats of businesses making it beyond 5 years, for example, is phenomenal. I think it's 95% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. So to be in that club and beyond, you have to be proud about that sort of thing.
Oh, definitely. I mean, 17 years is a hell of an achievement. I mean, I think we're approaching 12, and it's a miracle that we've made it to 12 sometimes, when you look back sometimes.
And it is, do you know what? Yeah, it is absolutely, it is a miracle. There's a lot of blood, sweat and tears that go into it, of course, but that's how, everything, achieving what you guys are achieving, what anybody's achieving in business, it is a miracle because there are so many things stacked against you, so many things, stuff that you don't even see or aren't aware of yet, potentially, but there is so much against you that to make it as far as you're making it, and that every day surviving is incredible.
With Starter Media, the learnings from that, what have you kind of learned that you would do differently, obviously in the new group, essentially?
There's a million things. I could sit here and talk for a good 10 hours about what we've learned. Everything has been learned on the fly, obviously. Move faster with decisions, I think. One of the key areas that I probably learned the most from is moving faster. I had people screaming at me, mainly accountants, saying you need to move faster on this. We need to pivot a little bit and to survive. And I didn't, because I'm very proud as a person, and I was adamant that no, I'm going to dig my heels in and we're going to get through this. So there was quite a few things at play that meant we had to do what we did. And it's never an easy decision, but things are put in place to enable businesses to do that so that you can continue to grow. We had to put the business in voluntary liquidation. There are 3 or 4 key reasons for us doing that. One of them was a major shareholder issue that we had, and it was a very significant deal, a very significant issue that we had with the shareholder in the business. I can't talk too much about it because it's an ongoing thing in the background, but it was causing us some real problems, and my hands were tied for 5 years running the business, and we had to do everything despite that issue. So that was always on the cards. It was always on the cards to close Starter down at some point and restructure the group. It's just that we had to move slightly quicker for many various reasons. There was a little bit of debt building up in the business and a few other bits at play. And the accountants, and we got lots of advice legally and accountants, and they were all saying the same thing. You need to move now. You need to be doing this like a year ago. What are you doing? But I wanted to, I wasn't, it's closing your business down that's my baby. That's not something that I want to do. But once I got into the kind of mindset of we're trying to preserve jobs, we're trying to preserve services that we're providing to clients and all that, then it was a no-brainer at the end of the day, and something that was a decision well made. My learning here is it's something that I should have done and moved a lot faster. So the biggest thing from this is making decisions faster, not burying your head in the sand. Not that we were burying our heads in the sand, because that definitely wasn't happening, but making tougher, more savvy business decisions and not letting your heart rule everything. I'm very much, as I said earlier, I'm very much a heart on sleeves kind of guy. But there are times when you need to just shift the emotions out of it and focus on business. And sometimes everybody will have big, very big decisions to make in business. Daily, we have little decisions to make, but there is once in a while where there's a huge decision that has to be made. And my learnings are make them faster.
Yeah. Ultimately, you know, every situation is different. And I think if you've got any other business owners or people that are looking to go into business, I guess it's just being aware that at some point you're either going to exit that business or the business is going to exit itself. So talking about a little bit from earlier, we were talking about acquisition. And at the beginning you were saying about your, you know, you set up the WOWVI group and there's going to be different elements to it. I believe you're looking to acquire a business or a businesses in certain areas. Is that journey still coming along nicely?
Yeah. And I tell you what, it's something that I'm devastated that I didn't look at 5, 6 years ago. I don't want to think about it too much because it does frustrate the hell out of me, but I'm here now. And yeah, that's the only way I'm going to grow. Excuse me. That's the only way I'm going to grow the business is through acquisition. I believe in it 100%. It is literally 100% of our growth strategy. And so I'm on that journey right now. It's pretty much my main key focus through the week is looking for prospective and motivated sellers of businesses. And they're out there. There are many of them. And then going through that whole conversation on how a deal could be structured, while in the background trying to get everything set up so that when we do acquire a business, that it's a relatively smooth process to plug them into the group and go from there. So we've got strategies in place and criteria as to the kind of business we're looking for, the kind of deals that would work for us, and then how we integrate into the business. But yeah, 100% like front of mind right now.
What kind of businesses are you looking to acquire? Is it going to be something in the similar industry?
Yeah, so we're looking for complementary services, and so we're looking at video companies so we can expand our current capacity because we're almost at capacity at the minute with WOWVI Video. So we're looking at acquiring new video companies from animation, live action, 3D, and all those to either fold into WOWVI Video or to certainly offer out and expand our capacity. So we're in that sector, but we're also looking at those other complementary services. So, for example, generalist marketing agencies, web development, graphic design is another area that we're looking at. So, to give clients that everything under one roof so that we can do a marketing campaign beginning to end. So, strategy, the thought behind a marketing campaign, PPC, building websites, creating video content, doing graphic designs, creating social media posts, blog posts, etc., etc. Anything to do with content production that would facilitate and complement a marketing campaign is kind of where we're at. The way we're approaching the group is, and the clients love this sort of angle, is we're literally an extension of their current marketing team, because a lot of businesses have marketing teams that are all thinkers, and then they outsource the actual creating content to other agencies. So you just plug us in and we work with the thinkers and we create the content. Or businesses that have zero marketing but don't want to go through the whole recruitment headache, and we just literally plug straight in.
The future, Danny, I believe you're looking at setting up a radio station, which I know Dan's probably quite excited about. You've always wanted to own your own radio station, haven't you?
I started one.
We might have a slot for you. I'm looking for talent at the minute to help host on the show. So let's keep that one in mind. We'll have a conversation separately, I think, on that one.
Yes. That sounds
yeah.
great.
So we've got WOWVI Business Radio is going to be launched in March. We were going to launch it in January, but because of everything that went on last year, we've had to delay it slightly. But because of my background in radio, there are no other business-specific radio stations on the planet. Nowhere. I've looked everywhere. I've looked high and I've looked low. There's Bloomberg TV that stream online and various other similar services to that, but there's no radio station that's dedicated to business owners.
Is this like going back to your roots? You just enjoy?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
That's what it's all
100%.
about.
But it's so much. Yeah, but it's so much easier now because to do an FM or an AM or even a digital radio station, it's a complete nightmare with Ofcom and all the other regulations that you have to go through, and a license has to be granted, and you've got to apply for it. So what we're doing with WOWVI Business Radio is we're going to have live elements of the channel. There's going to be content 24 hours a day. We're going to have music as well. So we've got PRS and MCPS and PPL licensing so that we can play commercial music on there. So we'll be targeting a certain kind of demographic. We'll have a breakfast show that will be live. We'll have an afternoon kind of drive time show that will be live. And then a team in the background that will be creating lots of content to go on that show. So in the early days, it might be that I'm approaching people like you and saying, look, can we just have your audio from your episodes and we'll whack it on the channel and put links to your website, and we'll have that sort of content going. And then we're just having your typical radio show type content, which is all about business. There'll be hourly news updates on business, just business. We're not going to get involved in anything else. It's just what's happening in the business world as it's happening, and just see how it goes. And it's one of those moments where I'm dipping my toe in. I'm gonna, I've talked about it and thought about it a lot, and I could continue to talk about it and think about it for the next 10 years and nothing ever happen, or I could just publicly have a go. And it's currently streaming right now in test mode, so there's nothing happening on it apart from my voice every once in a while going, you're listening to WOWVI Business Radio, temporary broadcast or whatever. But there's a website set up for it which needs updating, so I'm not going to give you that just yet. But yeah, March is when we're looking at soft launching it. We're going to launch it with a 24-hour live show, and then we're just going to test it and just see what the audience want or don't want. And right now I'm just trying to find people to get involved with it. It'll be relatively low budget to start with, but hopefully after a while, if we can get a little bit of traction, we may be able to commercialize it and monetize it a little bit. I've no intentions of making huge amounts out of it. I just want it to run itself and be able to pay people for their time, basically, because people's time is precious, and I don't want to be that business that's just asking for freebies left, right, and center. Those days are long gone. So yeah, we're working on strategies and a plan behind the scenes to create this radio station specifically for people that would watch this sort of content and follow my kind of content and the stuff that you guys are doing and everything else that's out there. And I don't want it to be too highbrow, too looking at only people that have been hugely successful in business and it being that motivational Tony Robbins type thing. I want it to be people that are like actually physically growing a bit. I imagine it similar to what I went through in the early days when I was looking for mentors, and there wasn't much online back in those days. But I want to be with a group of people who are all experiencing a similar thing, very much like what you guys are doing. When we first met, Dan, when we met for the first time and we were at that networking event and you were talking about your business and I was talking about my business, and it was very similar. There were some similarities in where we're at as far as growth goes, and having that kind of environment within this radio station, I think will be, really nice and really beneficial to a lot of people in business.
Definitely. I mean, it's something that I would listen to for sure. I mean, I'm one of those individuals that, when I'm cooking dinner, I have either a business podcast on, or I've got a YouTube business channel being played. So yeah, I'm always listening to something like that, essentially.
If you throw a bit of Beyonce in between the mix, I'll be definitely tuning in as well.
It's Beyonce. It's a real eclectic. We've pretty much got the music, because that's my background as well. I used to do music programming and producing and all sorts, but we've got a really good eclectic mix of music. We want it to be familiar but not familiar, if you know what I mean. So there'll be Beyonce and stuff in there, but it might be a track that you've not necessarily heard mainstream before, but it's a track that just grabs you and goes, ooh, that's interesting. So we'll be doing a lot of that. So I quite like the music element of it, because I do want it to feel, because it's very easy now to go online and find content and be able to, but how many times, and I have this a lot, so I'm looking for podcasts and I'm looking for the next Netflix show to watch, or I'm looking for the next YouTube entrepreneur or business person to follow, and I found myself wasting hours surfing and trying to find things and really not getting anywhere. Whereas what I'd like us to be as a radio station is to just give people, is to curate that content give people plenty to listen to there and then. Because that's what we've got a lot of. That culture is like back in the day when you used to have 3 TV channels. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember when we only had 3 or 4 TV channels.
I think it was 4.
You were,
4 with me.
yeah. I was old enough to remember those days, but there was a day where you would tune in at a certain time to watch a certain thing, and there was no brain power involved in it. There was no surfing. There was no, apart from the radio times when you was reading through and seeing what. But now it's just this noise, this sea of so much information out there, and for the most part, you've got to go and find that information. If the algorithms only go so far, they'll feed you stuff that they think you like and think you might be interested in, but sometimes they don't always get it right. But we're hungry for content, but it's sometimes a pain for us to go out and find that content. We want it. We're desperate to grab that, but sometimes where do you find it? So I think I want to go old school, more traditional with the radio station and just say, look, this is what the station's all about. It's about it's entertainment with really good grassroots knowledge on business, people in a similar boat with expertise in there as well, obviously. And if you can't be bothered searching for 20 minutes trying to find a podcast to listen to while the carrots are boiling on the hob, then just flick a switch and you're in. And we will feed you with some information that you might find useful. And around that, we will also guide you and point you in the right direction for the YouTube videos, for the Spotify or Apple podcasts and so on. So I saw a real niche there because I've been here so many times. Like last night I was walking the dog and it took me 20 minutes to get my coat on and to program the podcast into my phone because I was like, I have no idea what I want to listen to. Now, if I'd have, and I hate listening to radio, which I know is a bit weird because I'm from a radio background, but I hate listening to radio stations. I haven't listened to the radio in about 20 years. I hate radio. I hate presenters. I hate people talking over records, adverts. Hate it. Hate it. Which I know is a very strong opinion, but when you've been in radio for as long as I have. But then Spotify came along and but you still have to program that. You still have to find the music, create playlists, and that takes forever. So that's the mentality behind the business radio station is to curate some useful, so you can just hit. I can't be asked spending 20 minutes searching. Oh, WOWVI Business Radio's on. I'll open the app, press play. Right, I can get on with those carrots now.
How are you going to stream it? So it's going to be digital over like Alexa, things like that. Or was it actually going to be radio FM
online? So it's not FM. It's not digital. It's streaming. But because of the technology that's out there now, that we're going to have an app, so you can download the app and you can listen in the car anywhere that's got 5G, 4G, or a Wi-Fi connection. We'll also be streaming through some platforms, other apps that are out there. We're looking at in-tune radio, but they've stopped people adding at the minute I think they're at capacity, but it'll be very easy. You can click a link and you can listen to a link on a web browser. There's so many different ways to listen to it, but I think the key one will be the app that you can just very quickly download, and there it is. But also, and I've been the test broadcast that we've been doing recently. It's just been a link that just opens up in a browser on my phone, and I've been listening to it in the car, and it's as clear as day. It's a really good stream. It very rarely drops out. So we're still testing that technology and in the background. But Alexa, we will have. It'll be available on Alexa. So I make it as easy as I can for people to tune. It's harder now to tune. Don't know about you guys, but I found it harder to tune into FM radio now than I have anything else that I listen to and consume. Yeah. Getting a radio, tuning it in. I don't have an FM radio at all. I think I've got a digital radio knocking on, but even then it's just a faff. Whereas all this online, most of my content now is all streamed. Everything's streamed online. So it makes sense to plug radio into that as well now.
We just got a new radio downstairs, didn't we? We were using one from, I think, the early 2000s.
It's a new radio. We've got Alexa.
I've got an Alexa. We've modernised. So we did have an early 2000s radio that was my aunt's, knocking around, bit of an FM radio. Everyone, if you stood in the wrong area, static started to happen. So I suddenly realised, do you guys want an Alexa? And it was like, yeah, we do. And I was like, all right, okay. So we got that
to static.
Talking of podcasts, like you said, it is a battle out there to try and find, one that's interesting. Have you got potentially one you could recommend for our listeners, one that you've listened to either recently or previously, and that would be of value?
I've consumed so much content. I've listened to a lot of audiobooks is my main thing. I do listen to podcasts. There is one guy that I've been following a lot. There's two that have kind of influenced me in some capacity, motivated me, inspired me, something that I kind of my go-to podcasts. One of them is James Sinclair, who's the party man, and he owns a ton of businesses, and he shares everything online. So he's got video content as well as the podcast, and he's really good. I didn't like him to start with; he was a bit too out there and a bit too loud, but he's really grown on me, and I love his content now, and I consume pretty much everything that he puts out there. Even if it's just a little bit, we all sometimes we just need a little bit of inspiration, just something that kind of gets us going, gets us motivated in the morning. So his content, and then back in the day, I'm going back a few years now. I don't follow his content as much, but Gary Vaynerchuk or Gary V, who VaynerMedia, he had his Daily V series. His content's become a bit too much now, and it's just a bit too heavy. But back in the day, he'd do his Daily V or his Weekly V or whatever it was. And that was just a fly on the wall, somebody following him around with a camera. But his business knowledge was just infectious. Very Marmite. Gary V is quite a character, American business owner, and you either like him or hate him. Is that kind of character. So those, I guess, were the main two. Have you seen any of his?
Yeah, we've I mean, it was probably about 2 or 3 years ago. I shared some of his content with the team, and it was literally a 50-50 split. Half liked it, the other half not so much. But James Sinclair, we were almost a friend of the show, I would say. Almost. We were planning to have him on the show at some point. We actually went down to Marsh Farm and we ran a game show for him, didn't we?
We did.
But yeah, he's great though. I think I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of his of what he does. Just the stuff he shares, and he's got the knowledge. I mean, he's got good knowledge. He's got exceptional knowledge. I keep meaning to go to one of his webinars, one of his events that he puts on. I was hoping to go. I wanted to go to one last year, but I never got around to doing that. So, but then for the acquisition stuff, Jonathan J is probably the only person I've found online that I think's of any use, that delivers bags of value. The thing with Jonathan J, I was watching his stuff for about a year before I did anything with it, because I was a bit dubious to start with. I was a bit kind of like, this doesn't feel right. This feels a bit dodge. Something's not sitting quite right. But then after consuming his content for 2 years and then joining his mastermind class, his mentorship, he's probably moved the needle more for me as a business owner than probably any other podcast audiobook that I've listened to. And I've listened to months worth of audio, but I live on audiobooks. There are so many good ones that I listen to over and over and over again, that I've got a lot out of. So consume as much as you can.
There's been so much shared today, Danny. Thank you very much for coming on the We Built This Business show. So much is going on. I'm excited for the radio station. I'm excited for DJ Dan's 1 a.m. till 3 a.m. slot.
The graveyard shift.
I'm excited to obviously see where the WOWVI group goes, and also to hear about your acquisition progress as well over the next few years. And yeah, we'll definitely also arrange to maybe meet up at a James Sinclair event as well. We were at one of them last year. So yeah, really, really thanks for sharing everything you've been through over the last 17 years as well with the Diary of an Entrepreneur. It's a great series, and I think the last question I have for you really is, when is Series 5 coming out?
I'm filming it as we speak. This is what I'm filming it on. I'm not filming this. I filmed the beginning of this bit. So yeah, it's filming started this week. So there's a lot of content to come through that, and we're starting with what we had to do with Starter last year is playing a big part of episode 1. And then it should be launched in March is when we plan on releasing the 5th series. And then the podcast, I'm going to get that back up and running probably in the next couple of weeks. So I enjoyed doing that, the audio podcast on Spotify and the other platforms.
If people want to find more information about you, how do they go about doing that, Danny?
Easiest way to do it is just to go to the website. So dannylacey.business is the website. That's DANNY, and then Lacey is LACEY, and then just .business at the end. And there's links on there to the YouTube series, to the podcast, the audio podcast. There's some blog posts on there, and tons of other information as well.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Really enjoyed it, Danny. Thank you for joining us along. Thanks, Danny.
You're more than welcome, and thank you so much for inviting me on. I enjoyed that.
Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please click follow on your podcast platform. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel.